MINDIA, Mind of India. So ever since I remember, I've always been two things. I've been a musician and I've been an environmentalist. So these two pillars have pretty much dictated my whole life and every single life decision that I've ever made. I grew up in America. I grew up in this really small town called Roanoke Rapids, which is in the north of North Carolina. We used to live in the middle of nowhere, and there used to be a lot of wooded areas and forest areas around our home. And we used to have a lot of creepy crawly animals that would enter our home. And my parents, my teachers, my well-wishers used to always tell me that as soon as you see these animals, you're supposed to step on them and immediately kill them. And my question to them always used to be that if you're just supposed to kill them, or you're supposed to step on them or whatever, then why do they exist? They obviously have some purpose. And of course now I realize that every single species of animal, no matter how seemingly insignificant or seemingly dangerous, is a really important part of the ecosystem. And it's this delicate balance of the ecosystem that keeps all of us alive. So these are the questions that would keep me awake at night. My father, he had this huge music collection. And they were not just, the pop greats of those times, but also he had a lot of obscure music from all over the world. And I would listen to all of this music, learn about different musical instruments, learn about different people, learn about different cultures. So a lot of my education happened through music. That's how my childhood was, music and nature. And then later on in my life, both of these things came together very strongly. And that's why now the only kind of music that I make is about the environment and social impact around those areas. So in India, when it comes to music, music is synonymous with Bollywood. When a Bollywood composer or a Bollywood artist goes to a foreign country, they always get a full audience. They're able to fill up a stadium. But the only people who come to that stadium to watch the performance are people from the Indian diaspora. Because Bollywood, even though it's spread all over the world, they have not broken cultural barriers. Whereas when I was 19 years old, I went and watched a Pandit Ravi Shankar concert in San Francisco, and I was shocked that the demographic of the people sitting down in the audience in the theatre was exactly representative of the demographic of the people who were representative of the city. Like for example, if the city had about an 80% Caucasian population, then there were 80% Caucasian population in the theatre. If it was a 5% Asian population, it was 5% Asian population. And he was playing pure Indian classical music. So that is what hit me really hard, that this gentleman playing pure Indian classical music has become beloved all over the world, and he's broken cultural barriers so much so that people who are not Indians are appreciating his music. And that is what started off my career. So that is what I decided that this is exactly what I want to do. I want to break cultural barriers through my music. So when I started off my career, for the first 13 years, I did a whole lot of commercials, like television ads and radio ads. And I did more than 3,500 of them. I did ads for pretty much every brand possible. And then after doing this for about 13 years, it sort of struck me that these big brands have understood the power of music. They've understood the power of music so much so that they're ready to spend a few $1,000s on me to create a piece of music for them to sell something, because they're always trying to sell something. And not only that, they're ready to spend a few $1 million to actually air this music on television and radio. So they've understood that music is such a powerful language, not just for communicating a message, but for retaining that message deep in the head of a listener. So that is when I decided that me being a musician, I feel strongly about so many things in life, whether it's environment, whether it's society, whatever it is, there are so many things that I feel strongly about. And I decided that I need to harness the power of music. So after 13 years of doing this, as pretty much a sudden stop, I decided that every piece of music that I'm going to make is not going to be about selling something. It's going to be about, in my own small, tiny capacity and my own naive capacity, about making this world a better place. So then I stopped all forms of commercial music, and I decided that every piece of music that comes off my fingers, comes off my head, comes off my studio, is going to be about making this world a better place. And that's what started off that journey of mine.
And the Grammy goes to Winds of Samsara.
So with Winds of Samsara, that is the first album that I won the Grammy for. The collaboration was with this South African flute player, a guy called Wouter Kellerman. So I was a huge fan of his music. He was a huge fan of my music. So we met each other in Los Angeles, and we had this huge discussion as to how the two of us would collaborate with each other. And while we were discussing this, we came across this huge coincidence that he had just finished making a piece of music on his father of the nation, that is Nelson Mandela. And I had just finished making a piece of music on my father of the nation, that is Mahatma Gandhi. And we realized there's a whole lot of cross-pollination here because Mahatma Gandhi, as we all know, spent his formative years in South Africa, so he had South Africanness in him. And Nelson Mandela was heavily inspired by the non-violence movement by Mahatma Gandhi, so he had a lot of Indianness in him. So we decided this is how we'll work with each other. I'll send you my music, my Indian music, you add South Africanness to it, and you send me your South African music, I'll add Indianness to it. We worked with each other for about 2.5 years. So we released the album Winds of Samsara, and that album became hugely successful. It was the highest selling instrumental album of 2014, and that culminated with us winning a lot of awards, and finally with the Grammy Award.
And the Grammy goes to Stuart Copeland and Ricky.
After winning the Grammy in 2015, it was always in the back of my mind that I need to make a follow-up album to that. But then the problem is that for those 7 years, my touring schedule was absolutely relentless. Every year I was doing about 70 to 80 concerts in 15 to 20 countries, so just constant traveling. So there was no opportunity for me to actually sit down in the studio and, in a very concentrated and focused manner to actually make a new album. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, so we all were forced to stay indoors. I was sitting here for pretty much the whole pandemic. And during that time, in the beginning of 2022, I started making few pieces of music that would eventually go on to becoming Divine Tides, the new album. And while I was making the music, I felt that I needed to have a strong collaborator for it. Now, growing up, I was a huge fan of Stuart Copeland, the drummer of The Police, one of the greatest drummers in the history of humankind. Also done 50 movie soundtracks, sold 75 million albums, 5 Grammy Awards. So I reached out to him and I was very surprised that he loved the music and he said, let's do this album together. That ended up with Divine Tides. We made the album after hundreds of Zoom calls, hundreds of phone calls and emails and text messages and all of that stuff. And we'd never met each other in person ever. So we made the album, released it. The album was hugely successful. And then that culminated with us getting nominated for the Grammy Award. And we still had not met each other. And the first time we met each other was actually 7 days before the Grammy Awards, where he had a concert in Nashville. I went to the concert, met him, and we hugged each other for the first time. It was a very emotional experience for me. And then we went to Las Vegas for the Grammys, and then we ended up going on stage and actually winning the award. So this nomination is for the same album, Divine Tides, but it's for a different category, for Best Immersive Audio Album. So basically it's about an album that has been created as an immersive experience where you have sound enveloping you from all 4 sides. Now the thing about this particular category, what makes me so happy about getting nominated in this category along with Stuart Copeland again, is that this particular category is not a genre category. It's not like Best Jazz Album or Best Rock Album or Pop Album or New Age Album. It is immersive album in any genre anywhere. So it's quite amazing that pretty much for the first time, an Indian album is competing against mainstream, Western acts, like Christina Aguilera and Chainsmokers. Musicians from India, especially the younger lot of musicians, they feel that if they want to get global recognition and they want to be known all over the world, and that's something that they crave for, they believe that they have to perform English music, they have to perform pop music, they have to do hip-hop music. But if you dig deep into your own roots, and if you understand what is it that makes you an Indian, and create music based on that, and then you will be appreciated worldwide. And that's why people like Pandit Ravi Shankar, Ustad Zakir Hussain, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, Anushka Shankar, Fazal Qureshi, Hari Prasad Chaurasia, Pandit Vishwamohan Bhatt, these people have been so appreciated all over the world because they stick to their roots and they play music that defines them as being an Indian. So my music is music that I call, my own genre of music. But essentially it's music with a purpose and music with meaning, because there are so many things that I feel strongly about. Now, my music, I would call it extremely entertaining, that is for sure. Because if the music is not entertaining and you're just going to make music about a message and say that, oh, it has a message and the music is not entertaining, then what's the point of it if nobody's going to listen to it? The main thing is that people need to listen to the music and enjoy it. And then it's got an added message which people can take home with them, and people can bring about behavioral change, people can understand this message, and people can be inspired to bring about changes within their own lives.
MINDIA, Mind of India.